Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening, brother. Looking good, man. Looking
Yes,
good.
sir. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. All right. Let's get started here. All right. Okay. Welcome to Lee's Feed podcast. I'm your host, Lee A. Coleman II. Please like and subscribe to this channel. Today, our guest is Mr. Dave Moore, who is currently an alderman in Chicago. Mr. Moore is a candidate for the Secretary of State's office in the state of Illinois. Am I right about that?
That is absolutely correct.
Okay, all right then. Thank you for taking out some time to talk to the people downstate, which, sometimes we're forgotten in politics, but downstate is very important. Let me ask you a question before we get started. Maybe people downstate don't know you, so I'm going to give you a chance to tell us who you are. Give us a brief bio of David H. Moore.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And there's a lot of people, like, this is a big state, and a lot of people don't know a lot of the candidates down in the race, but I would say probably down, especially in the Metro East area, probably people know more about me. More people know more about me than they do the other two candidates. And I'll get to that as I tell you a little bit about me. I was born and raised in Chicago, started out in the Robert Taylor Home Projects of Chicago. When I moved out of there when I was 11 years old, my aunt and uncle wanted to give us a better chance at life. We then moved to a community called the Inglewood community. And so that's when I was like 11 years old. I grew up serving in the church, and I tell people there's a difference between a public servant and a servant. I grew up serving, and I was serving in the church well before I became a public servant. I came up under the leadership of the Reverend Dr. Clay Evans, who not only christened me, but baptized me, and started out my first introduction to serving was that of a junior deacon in the church. And so after I moved out of Robert Taylor Homes and we moved to Inglewood, my uncle was what we'll call an assistant precinct captain. And so you have committeemen and you have precinct captains, and those are the people who help get the vote out, help get people elected. And my uncle would pay me $5 to run up and down the street and put literature in people's mailboxes. But I have to tell you, I didn't care about no politics. I just wanted that $5 to get some Boston baked beans and Chico sticks with. But when I turned 13, that same uncle took me to a breakfast with him on the south side of Chicago, called this Black-owned hotel called the Roberts Motel on 63rd and King Drive. And there I met a state senator who was running for Congress by the name of Harold Washington. And I had to be the youngest person in the room, and he looked me in my eye and he talked about the importance of young people being involved in their community. At that point, that $5 no longer became important to me, but serving in my community is what became important to me. And so that's when I started getting into what I call community service, just serving in the community. I graduated from Simeon High School, and then I went on to West Illinois University in Macomb. Now, it was at Western Illinois where I had a dual degree in accounting and operations management, where I learned to love Illinois. I served as an RA. As most of us, we had to either get a student loan, or to do some of that too, work a work-study program, or be an RA to help you our way through college. One of the things as an RA is that you were responsible for 40 guys. So over a 3-year period that I was an RA, I was responsible for over 120 guys. And all these 120 men, and even some young women at times, were from across the state, and many I met from the Metro East area. And so even my childhood sweetheart who lived in my college sweetheart who lived in Belleville, Illinois, and God bless her soul. But my thing is, got to just know many people across this state. After graduating from college, I had 2 job offers because I was going to actually move to St. Louis. And so I opted to go work for Ralston Purina Company in the Quad Cities with hopes of coming to the corporate office in St. Louis. And so, but my dad came down with cancer after a year and a half of working with Ralston. So I had to come back to Chicago, worked with several other Fortune 500 companies, including the Clorox Company and Avery Dennison Corporation, before going into the public sector as an accountant at the Department of Aviation at O'Hare Airport. And I then went to the Chicago Housing Authority as a development manager, and then began to work for the Board of Review of Tax Appeals in Cook County before I ran for alderman of the 17th Ward. And so I'm in my 7th year as alderman of the 17th Ward, and Secretary of State Jesse White is not seeking re-election. And I somewhat laid my resume out to you, and I tell you, I put my resume against any other candidates in this race, and neither one of them can stand to it. My service as a committed to the constituents, as a public servant in terms of just serving people, and that's what's important to me, and that's why this seat is important to me. Just not serving people in Chicago, but serving people throughout this state, as I've always done since I've been in college.
This may be somewhat of a rhetorical question, but why politics? Why would you not serve in any other capacity to serve people rather than politics? Why politics? What is the importance of it?
It's not a rhetorical question. It's a good question, because I tell people there's two people I keep my eyes on. Anybody say they want to be a preacher, and anybody saying they want to be an elected official, because it's not something you run to, it's something you run from. And it's a calling on your life. And that's what happened to me. It was a calling, one that I ran from. Wasn't interested in it. By working, and should I say by volunteering in public service, not only helping on her Washington campaign, Carol Mosley Braun campaign. I'm the only one in this race who circulated petitions for Secretary of State Jesse White back in 1997. Worked on Barack Obama's congressional campaign and his loss to Bobby Rush. He only won 3 precincts. One of them was mine. Worked with him on his Senate race. And so, in working with just different people, I always love to see other people elevated. I never wanted to be in that spot, because politics is just so dirty, and I'm more focused on service, and so it was that calling that got me there, not so much my need or want to be a elected official.
Okay, state office, Secretary of State. Why Secretary of State as opposed to any other state office?
Absolutely. Number one, it reminds me of my aldermanic seat. Again, a calling, but it reminds me of my aldermanic seat. I get to serve everybody. It's a nonpartisan seat. The Secretary of State seat really is a nonpartisan seat, like my aldermanic seat is, where you have to serve everybody, regardless of party affiliation, regardless of race, regardless of ethnicity, color, or anything. You just get to serve people. It's an office that everybody, whether you're a child on up to adult, that you have to touch the Secretary of State's office at least one time in your life, whether you're doing bike safety, getting your driver's license, or whether you're starting a business, or whether you're becoming a lobbyist, or whether you're at the library, because the Secretary of State is also the state librarian. And so that's what attracts me to it, because I think it's important that this seat remain a servant seat. Since before Jesse White, every other elected official used this seat as a stepping stone to either the U.S. Senate or to Congress. Secretary White came in, just wanted to serve, and didn't look for another position out of that. And that's what I've committed to as well. It's important this seat stay a service seat. I'm not looking to use it as a stepping stone. I will not run for governor. I will not run for U.S. Senator, unlike my other opponents. I'm looking to just come here and serve, and then get out the way so we can help groom and develop some of these young people to come on.
What is the function of that office? You ran through a litany of functions of the Secretary of State's office. What is a couple that most of us don't even realize that the Secretary of State's office is responsible for? Can you think of any?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And so one of the ones that's very, very critical to me, besides driver services that everyone knows about, is the fact that the Secretary of State is the state librarian. The number of grant dollars that can come to our libraries to not only enhance our libraries from a physical standpoint, but from a resource standpoint as well. When we're talking about using VR technology that some of our children don't even have access to in their home, we could use a lot of those grants dollars for that VR technology that kids can have and access to libraries, to not only bring them in to use those resources, but get them to reading again. Another crucial part of the Secretary of State office is, as major corporations begin to flee our communities and we're relying more and more on small businesses, it's important that small businesses have the opportunity without any bureaucracy to get their businesses incorporated. And that's a critical part of the Secretary of State's office. Another important one is that as we've dealt with and saw at the US, from the US level, the insurrection on the Capitol building, people start paying attention to, hey, what's going on at the Capitol buildings? A lot of people don't know the Secretary of State is not only is responsible for maintaining all the Capitol buildings at the state, but also for securing those Capitol buildings. So he's in charge of the Capitol Police as well as the Secretary of State's police. So there's a myriad of functions that touch the Secretary of State's office. And another one that's near and dear to my heart is the organ donation program. Not only as when someone dies, but a living donor becomes very important. We look in our communities and we see so many dialysis centers, almost on every corner, somewhere a dialysis center. So it's important that we educate our people and get away from this stigma of donating. And so being not only a donor after death, but a living donor is important to our community.
So what would you do to entice our community, the African-American community, to become organ donors? What's in your plan to get us up to par with other communities?
First of all, educate. Again, remove that stigma, but then begin to show examples of people who, just like, I don't know if people down there are probably Cardinal fans, but up in Chicago, Harold Baines, I mean, a legendary White Sox player, got a chance at a second life because he were able to get both a lung replacement and I think it was a heart replacement as well. When we think about our police superintendent who almost died, and his son said, "Dad, I'm gonna give you, part of my kidney." He looks great. Have another second chance at life, and letting people know that, hey, your loved ones can live longer. But not only that, if someone passes away, how many other lives that we can save by donating? Because in the African American community, our body, blood, and everything else is not compatible always to other people. So when we can have an opportunity to save someone's life, we can't because we're not donating.
Okay, would you engage the churches and other organizations to help educate our communities? How would you do that?
Absolutely. It's first of all, my first is to start at school, because by the time you get to an adulthood, you get a stigma in your head. And so my thing is to educate in the schools, talk about organ donation in the schools, and then go into the churches and community organizations. I know not only in Chicago, but throughout this state, community organizations are the bloodline to communities, and making sure that they get resources and grant dollars to talk about it and educate so that we can increase their awareness.
Okay, one of the things, and I'm a victim of it, I used to work for the Secretary of State's office. In 1973, I worked in driver services. The year I got married in 73, and after I graduated, I went on to work for driver services on Dirksen Parkway. Most people complain about the long lines. How are you going to address that? That's the biggest complaint I hear. There's nothing else of complaints, but what would you do to make it more expedient to get there and take care of business?
Absolutely. First of all, I continue to build on what Secretary White has already done, and that's start doing appointments. Number two, as we advance and use technology to enhance, people can go online and register and renewal. But also what I've talked about is, since the Secretary of State is also the state librarian, we can use our library as satellite offices, bring it even closer to people to do those quick renewals, like getting my sticker, or a quick renewal, like renewal my driver's license at the library, which will minimize a lot of the long lines at the DMV. But I also am the first in this race to propose, and now the state legislature is picking up more, is digital license plates. Right now, California, Arizona, and Michigan are using digital license plates, and through digital license plates, you can do registration, you can renew your licenses, you can do all that, but it's also a great safety mechanism. Right now, carjacking is big in our state and in very communities throughout this state. And if someone's, part of the problem is they're not catching people in these cars. And with digital license plates, if your car is stolen, it can immediately flash stolen on that plate, so that person can be apprehended, or also so it can be a deterrence even before somebody take it.
What would be the process for digital plates? How would I engage in it if it was working and functioning now?
Okay, It'll get installed by a third party. So it's a cost savings of over $250 over a 5-year period. So that's the first and most important thing. It's a cost savings. But as you get it on, a third party will install it on, unless we do a contract with them where the city, but where it's done nationally right now, a third party installs it on, and it's used through an app on your phone. So it runs, of course, because you know, just like anything else, it runs on your battery operated through a battery operated system through your car. But right now, what it would do is be a function that you can just use through your phone, at one of your smartphone, so that it can, you know, like I said, if it's stolen, you can say, get on your phone and say it's stolen, or you can make a call just in case your phone is in the car. You can use somebody else's phone, put in some type of ID number to your car, say it's stolen, and then it start flashing stolen. And then when you want to renew your plate, instead of going into the Secretary of State office, you'll just renew it through the digital license plate.
That's good. Okay. Voter registration in the Secretary of State's office. That's a question that, you know, has come under fire recently because some state legislators have attempted to take over that function from the Secretary of State. So what are your plans for voters registration?
And so right now, and you'll hear people talk about the Secretary of State offices throughout the country as it relates to access to voting, certifying election results. All of that is under attack throughout the country. Our Secretary of State's office doesn't have the jurisdiction of making sure and certifying voters registration. That's done through the Board of Elections under the governor's office. But the Secretary of State has a responsibility. That's why you hear me talk about the service of the Secretary of State, the business of the Secretary of State, and the responsibility of the Secretary of State. Secretary of State has a responsibility to make sure that voter registration and voter integrity is maintained. One of the things that we can do to do that and increase voter registration, I'm the first one in this race to say that right now, a 16-year-old can get their license, correct? But they cannot register to vote when they're 16. Well, at 18, they're going to get a birthday card from me saying, happy birthday, you are automatically registered to vote. We're going to give them what we call a opt-out option instead of an opt-in option to get them on the voter rolls, and so that we can make sure that we're protecting voter integrity.
Okay, what would you say is I say 2 or 3 major differences between you and how many opponents do you have in the race?
There's 2 primary opponents, and I'm gonna just be honest with you, as they do, especially sometimes in Chicago, but it's an Illinois thing as well. They play politics, so they put somebody in the race with the last name as mine, who's not really running, but one of the opponents paid enough money to get them on the ballot, and just to have their name on there in order to take votes from the African-American community, since I was the only African-American in the race. So the African-American vote is key, very key to this race. And they needed someone in there to take votes away from me. They put someone who is not even really running, and not haven't showed up to any events. People don't even know they're running. But when you get to on election day, or you get your ballot, that person's name will be on the ballot. And you'd be like, who is that? Which Moore do I vote for? And you just remember David Moore, the man after God's own heart. And so, yeah, that's.
Let me ask you this here. You know, the political machine is important. Have they endorsed you?
Whatever you call the machine is to me perception, and I think we give it more power than it has when we talk about it, because there really isn't a machine. The machine really in Chicago died with Richard J. Daley, and then there was factions under Richard M. Daley and Speaker Madigan, because the Richard M. Daley had the city and basically part of the, well, he didn't really have the county because John Stroger had the county, and Speaker Madigan had Illinois. So that was fractured. And so what you talk about is, you talk about the powers to be. And so it's no machine that exists anymore. It's people who have their interests and they try to protect their interests. So right now it's split between all three of us. This morning, I received the endorsement of Congressman Danny Davis, which I'm happy to have.
That's
and
great.
so it's split. And people have their own self-interest, but if people have the interest of the people, those are the people that are supporting me.
You know, one thing that I used to be an elected official, I was a committeeman, and I mentioned the machine for a reason, because there's nothing more powerful than the people.
Nothing more
And that's what we have to get out. And what are you going to say to the people? How do you get the people to say, I don't care who the party chief is or who the committeeman is. If I see a qualified candidate and he looks like me, I'm going to give him my vote. How do you get that?
By what we're doing right now. This is a big state. And unfortunately, unless you're a millionaire running 30-second soundbite ads that people may or may not believe or confuse people even more, you have to do grassroots. We've been out here since last May. We've been to the Metro East area at least 5 times, touching people. We have people out there volunteering for us. And I thank the people in the Metro East area. They did me a petition drive in Fairview Heights. I want to thank Alderman Denise Williams, as well as Sharon Bird, who really helped me with that, and others who came out. So when we did our petition drive, it just wasn't from signatures from Chicago. I got signatures from Quincy, who helped me do a petition drive. I got signatures from Peoria, who helped me do a petition drive, Galesburg, Kane County, DeKalb, Illinois. And so all of these people helped me because they believe in good government. And like you said, they don't believe in what we normally call machine politics, because they recognize the power of the people. But part of it is people trust people that they know. People trust you. So your neighbors trust you. The people that listen to you trust you. And so if what you have, because your name comes all the way to Chicago, man. And so Reverend Clay Evans used to tell me, keep a good name. Keep a good name, because your name will get somewhere before you do. And so you have a good name here in Chicago by people that I have met. And so I'm sure the people in the Metro East area definitely respects you. And so when you're talking about it, when people like Sharon Bird talking about it, who's a real respected person in the Metro East area, people hear Alderman Denise Williams and others talk, that's what's going to help get the word around. And so we're going to continue to do that throughout this state, and we're going to win this race.
Yes, sir. Okay. You talked about streamlining and improving customer service. I know we hit on that a little bit. Could you embellish that a little bit, that conversation?
Absolutely. I had a dual degree in accounting and operations management. And one of the areas that I worked in when I was in corporate America was an operations manager. And one of our focus, which people take out of, is quality control. People miss quality control, and we were in corporate America, we were beat over the head with that. And everything begins with quality and value, and that's quality service at an affordable price. And so when we're implementing quality TQM practices, total quality management practices, the public sector normally does not do that. The public sector does not do it, but guess where it's needed most? In the public sector.
Absolutely.
Private sector corporations do it. You know why? Because it keeps them from raising their costs. You understand what I'm saying? And when they're not raising their costs, they stay competitive with their competitors. In the public sector, the reason why it's not practiced, because they're not focusing always on costs, because guess what they always come back and do? Just put it on the taxpayers. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
And so I want to make sure that I'm implementing total quality management practices that I implemented and put in place and worked on when I was in corporate America, and that's total quality service at an affordable price.
Absolutely, that's so important. I don't know if the average layman would understand that, but that is so important. That's how you're going to get those lines down. Create a youth engagement office. What is that going to be like?
Oh, thank you. That's of everything that I'm talking to you about, that's the one that's nearest, dearest to my heart. you like it, you heard me talk about the service of the Secretary of State, and that's the most important thing, that this office remain a servant seat and not go back to being a political seat. Again, I'm not using this office as a stepping stone for governor or US Senate like my other opponents are. This is my last stop as an elected official, and I just want to serve just like Secretary White served. Two, you hear me talk about the business of the Secretary of State. Heard me talk about my financial and accounting background, making sure that we keep these fees down and making sure that we're putting things in place like bringing satellite office to the library. But the responsibility of the Secretary of State, one of the key things is, I was the first one in this race to talk about it, and I'm glad my opponents are taking it, and that's create 122 youth engagement offices at every driving facility throughout this state, giving our young people interns all year round to teach civic responsibility and professional responsibility. They're not learning civics like many of us, some of us did in high school, especially. And so we want to let people know uphand how your government works. We want you to see that you don't have to be a millionaire to be involved in government, or that you don't have to have like what you call the machine people behind you in order to make a difference in your community. And so those are the things that we want to teach, because everybody look and they just want to run for office, but they don't know about all those middle management positions, Lee, that are so critical. Those middle management positions are more important than the office holders seat.
It's huge.
And so many of them are at many times giving out contracts, are many of times making policies. And so even the policies and the contracts that the office holder isn't coming up with. And so I want to make sure our young people are exposed to that, so that they don't have to fall in line into what we call the machine politics, but be creative in changing what we're trying to change here in Illinois.
Is the mentoring piece a part of what you're talking about, reference to youth engagement, or is there a volunteer piece for the community to get involved to help you with this, or is the Secretary of State going to take it on by itself?
It'll be a public-private partnership. So we have what we do in Chicago, we do this thing called One Summer Chicago, and corporations pay into the city, and well, when I not pay into the city, they donate their funds into the city's program, and then we're able to hire students all year round, or sometimes during the summer, but in this case for the state, it'll be all year round. So getting your private philanthropy companies involved, that's who will pay for it. The taxpayers would not have to pay for it. That's number one. Number two, you have corporations, you have community organizations, you have teachers, retired teachers even, willing to come in and teach civics, willing to come in and teach professional responsibility, willing to come in and teach about those minimum management positions that they've worked in or that they're aware of. And so it is a mentoring program, but it's also an internship, all-year-round internship program for our young people, a paid internship program.
Okay, and we're going to wrap it up here in a minute, but I want to ask you about expanding access to services. What do you mean by that?
Okay, and so that's what I was talking about when I was saying expanding access to services. That's what I was talking about in terms of making sure that we bring those services, satellite offices, to the library. Right now, that was an out-the-box idea for me. It seems simple, but it's never happened. Here, the Secretary of State is the state librarian. We have these libraries. Why not bring those services closer to those communities? You have different communities of different races. You have different communities of different languages, that if you bring those things closer to the communities, then people will have it more accessible to them. But also, as an alderman, my constituents, I have what I call constituent night every Monday night. So my constituents can come and talk to me one-on-one. As the Secretary of State, I have these quarterly meetings in the townships and throughout the different counties, making sure that people will have access to the Secretary of State. I will be a hands-on Secretary of State, not just a behind-the-scenes Secretary of State, but a hands-on, where I'm having town hall meetings, where you invite me to Metro East area and say, hey, let us hear from the residents about what they're seeing at their Secretary of State's office, so that we can improve on those things. I will be accessible to the residents.
Okay, if you were going to talk to, and you are talking to your constituents and some possible supporters of yours, And what is the difference between you and your opponents? Why would I vote for you? Tell me why I should vote for you.
Absolutely. I appreciate that question so much. First of all, most of Illinoisans are me. Most of Illinoisans can relate to me. Both of my opponents, and again, you have a choice. I'm not the millionaire, but many of us want to be a millionaire. But people feel like they cannot be elected to office because they're not a millionaire. Just somebody to be missing for 10 years and then come and drop $2 million and say, I want to run for office so that they can seek another higher office 4 years or 8 years later is not somebody we should be seeking to be in office. That's what I'm not trying to do. So first and foremost, both of my opponents are seeking and using this office as a stepping stone. I am not. That's the greatest difference. The other difference is I've really served the community as an alderman. I've worked with constituents, not just in a mass office setting where I let my workers do it. I take the complaints. I listen to my residents. That's what I do as an alderman right now. And that's the type of Secretary of State you need. The other difference is my ability to not be have to answer to somebody else. But both of my candidates will have to check in with somebody. I don't have to check in with anybody but the residents. They'll tell you they won't, but they will. She will have to check in with Dick Durbin, and he will have to check in with all the union leaders. And so I just have to check in with the people. And so that's the greatest difference between me and my opponents.
Your candidacy reminds me of a young senator named Barack Obama that we helped here in Southern Illinois. He didn't get the endorsements, but he got the people. And we're hoping that you are able to duplicate that in your race, because I've met you. I've heard nothing but good things about you. I know a lot of people who said they're going to be for you, even though they don't think that the major quote unquote machine is going to be for you, but it's about the people.
It's about the people.
Down here in Southern Illinois, where we are, we're excited about your candidacy, and we're going to do all that we can to help you, because I'm not owned by anyone either. And I see your heart is in it. You talked about Harold Washington, a person I had a chance to meet who was for the people, worked his way up through the system and became mayor. So, hey, brother, we're with you and bless you. Hope that everything works out okay, but we got a lot of work to do. We're going to get to it, and we're going to talk again.
Absolutely. I appreciate this opportunity. I want to thank all the your listeners. If you want a yard sign, please either call our office at 773-846-0289. We're setting up, working with different churches down there to get our yard signs. People want some of the large 4x4 signs to put in their yard. We'll have people dropping them off down there so you all can pick them up. Or you can, if you want to make a donation, every donation helps. Go to our website at www.moore4illinois.com, moore4illinois.com. Make a donation, any contribution, be a part of your government. Otherwise, if you're not to change, somebody else is going to change it for you.
Okay, well, this interview will be on YouTube in a few, so we really thank you and look forward to talking to you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Make sure I get a link of that.
Yes, sir. Okay, thank you.